H possibility. The names of Washington, Jefferson, Hamilton, and Madison were spoken with reverence. These men were giants, shaping the destiny of a nation. I often wondered, could someone like me, the son of an innkeeper from a small Dutch-speaking village, ever hope to make a mark on the future of this country? That question fueled my ambition and gave me courage to dream. Looking back, my early years were not marked by wealth or privilege. They were ordinary in many ways. But it was precisely this ordinary beginning that taught me resilience. It forced me to rely on my own resourcefulness, my wits, and my determination. Little by little, I realized that my life would be bound to politics, that I would dedicate myself to serving, leading, and, at times, fighting for what I believed was right. Today, as I recount my story to you, I want you to see not just the life of a president, but the journey of an ordinary man who rose to extraordinary heights. My life was filled with victories and defeats, honors and disappointments. I reached the pinnacle of political success, but I also faced moments of bitter failure. In the chapters ahead, I will take you through the stages of my life, my childhood and education, my beginnings as a lawyer, my first steps into politics, and my climb into national prominence. You will hear of my years as president, the challenges I faced in office, and the legacy I left behind. You will also hear of my later years, when I had the chance to reflect on all that had passed. So now, let us begin at the beginning. Let us return to that small village of Kinderhook, where a boy with big dreams first began his journey toward the world stage. I was born on December 5th, 1782, in Kinderhook, New York, a small Dutch village along the Hudson River. To many, Kinderhook might have seemed an unremarkable place, quiet, rural, far from the centers of wealth and power. But to me, it was the world that shaped my earliest years, the soil where the roots of my character grew deep. My parents were of Dutch descent, as were most of our neighbors. The rhythms of our lives were tied to Dutch customs, the Dutch Reformed Church, and the Dutch language. In fact, Dutch was the first language I spoke. It was the language of my home, my school, and my village. English, though the language of our new nation, came to me only later, and I learned it with effort and persistence. This made me different from most Americans, and later in life, when I entered politics, it became a mark that set me apart. Some saw it as a limitation, but I came to embrace it as a strength, a reminder that America was not just built by English colonists, but by immigrants from many lands. My father, Abraham Van Buren, was an innkeeper and farmer. He was not wealthy, but he was respected in our community. His inn was a gathering place for villagers and travelers alike. I remember the smell of wood smoke in the winter, the creaking of boots on the wooden floors, and the hum of voices rising in animated discussion. Men would argue about taxes, trade, or the decisions being made in Albany or Philadelphia. Some spoke of the revolution and the sacrifices they had made. Others debated the future of this fragile union of states. For a young boy like me, those conversations were a kind of education. I would sit in the corner, listening intently. I could not always grasp the full meaning of the debates, but I understood their energy, their importance. I learned early that words have power, the power to persuade, to inspire, to divide, and to unite. That tavern, more than any classroom, was my first school of politics. My mother, Maria, was the steady foundation of our family. She was patient, industrious, and devout. She taught me values that no book could ever convey: the importance of honesty, the dignity of hard work, and the strength to endure hardship with grace. We were not a wealthy family, and life in Kinderhook could be difficult, especially in the long winters when food was scarce and labor was hard. But my mother never allowed despair to take hold. She reminded us daily that faith, patience, and determination could overcome even the greatest obstacles. I remember the simplicity of life in Kinderhook. We rose early with the sun, our days governed by the cycles of farming and community life. There were chores to be done, lessons to attend, and responsibilities to shoulder. Yet within that simplicity, there was richness, a sense of belonging, a rhythm of life that tied us to the land and to each other. The church bells rang on Sundays, and the village gathered for worship. Festivals and traditions, carried over from our Dutch heritage, gave color to our lives. My formal education was limited compared to that of the wealthy. I attended the local village school, where instruction was basic and books were few. Yet I was eager to learn. I absorbed every lesson in reading, writing, and arithmetic. More importantly, I began to practice the art of reasoning and debate. I discovered I had a sharp tongue and a quick mind, and I delighted in the chance to argue a point. Teachers and neighbors alike noticed this, and some predicted I might one day become a lawyer. As I grew older, I took on more responsibilities at the inn. I helped serve travelers, cared for the horses, and sometimes even listened to disputes between guests. Watching my father manage his inn with fairness and calm taught me lessons about leadership and judgment. A man's reputation, I learned, was his most valuable possession. If you were honest, people trusted you. If you broke your word, trust was lost forever. This principle became the foundation of my political philosophy, that a leader must earn the trust of the people through integrity. Though my childhood was modest, my imagination reached beyond Kinderhook. News of the wider world filtered into our village. I heard stories of General Washington, of Jefferson and Hamilton, of the debates that shaped our Constitution. These men seemed larger than life, figures of almost mythic stature. Yet I could not help but wonder, why not me? Why could not a boy from Kinderhook, the son of an innkeeper, one day rise to such heights? This thought stayed with me like a spark in my heart, fueling my ambition. That I will not pretend that I was without flaws as a boy. I was ambitious, sometimes too much so. I dreamed of making a name for myself, of stepping beyond the boundaries of our little village. Yet that ambition gave me drive. It made me push harder, study longer, and look beyond what seemed possible. By the time I was a teenager, it was clear to me that I would not spend my life farming or keeping an inn. My talents were elsewhere, in argument, in persuasion, in understanding the law. I longed to become a lawyer. To me, the law was not just a profession. It was a way to give order to society, to resolve disputes, and to protect liberty. In law, I saw both opportunity and purpose. Kinderhook gave me a foundation, discipline, community, values, but I knew I would have to leave it to achieve my destiny. My first steps beyond the village were uncertain, but they marked the beginning of a journey that would take me into the halls of government, across the turbulent currents of politics, and eventually into the presidency itself. Looking back, I realize how much my early years shaped me. The Dutch heritage I carried, the lessons of honesty and resilience from my parents, the debates overheard in my father's tavern, all of these were threads woven into the fabric of my character. They gave me the strength to endure hardship, the skill to navigate politics, and the conviction to believe that a man of humble birth could rise to serve his nation. Thus, from the quiet fields and modest taverns of Kinderhook began the journey of my life. As I grew into my teenage years, it became clear to me, and to those around me, that my future would not be in farming or in running my father's inn. My talents lay elsewhere. I had a sharp mind for argument, a love of words, and a determination to rise beyond the boundaries of Kinderhook. I dreamed of becoming a lawyer, for in the law I saw both opportunity and a path to influence. In those days, there were few formal schools for legal education. Young men with ambition sought apprenticeships under established lawyers. So, at the age of 14, I began studying law in the office of Francis Sylvester, a respected attorney in Kinderhook. It was not an easy path. Apprenticeship meant long hours copying documents, reading dense legal texts, and learning the procedures of the courts. But I was eager, and I quickly gained a reputation for diligence and skill that I remember vividly the first time I was allowed to observe a trial. The courtroom was modest, the arguments simple by today's standards, but to me it felt like the center of the world. I watched as lawyers presented their cases, as judges weighed evidence, and as juries reached decisions. I saw how justice was not just about laws written on paper, but about persuasion, about character, about the ability to move people with reason and conviction. From that moment, I knew I was on the right path. My progress in Kinderhook brought me confidence, but it also stirred my ambition further. I knew that if I wished to advance, I would need to broaden my horizons. At the age of 20, I moved to New York City to complete my legal training. There, I entered the office of William Peter Van Ness, a man of great energy and a close ally of Aaron Burr. This was my first real exposure to the broader world of American politics, and it left a deep impression on me. New York City was unlike Kinderhook in every way. It was bustling, diverse, and full of ambition. In the offices of Van Ness, I encountered men who spoke not just of local disputes, but of national issues, tariffs, banking, the Constitution itself. I learned that the law was inseparable from politics, and that the courtroom and the political arena were bound together in shaping the destiny of our young nation. It was during this time that I first became acquainted, even if indirectly, with the political struggles between two giants, Alexander Hamilton and Aaron Burr. Van Ness, my mentor, was fiercely loyal to Burr. Their faction, known as the Burrites, opposed Hamilton and his Federalist allies. I was young, still learning, but I could sense the intensity of their rivalry. When Burr later fought Hamilton in that fateful duel in 1804, I was struck by how personal and perilous politics could be. That event left a shadow over New York politics for years, and it taught me a valuable lesson. Ambition in America could lift men to greatness, but it could also destroy them. After completing my training, I was admitted to the bar in 1803 at the age of 21. Returning to Kinderhook, I opened my own law practice. My reputation grew quickly. I had a keen ability to prepare cases, to argue effectively, and to win the confidence of juries. I was not wealthy, but I was ambitious, and my clients ranged from farmers with small disputes to more prominent figures in the community. Each case sharpened my skills, and each victory built my confidence. But even then, I knew the law alone would not satisfy me. The debates I had heard in my father's inn, the lessons I had absorbed in New York City, all of them pulled me toward politics. I wanted to shape not only the outcome of trials, but the policies and direction of my state, and perhaps even my country. In 1803, I became active in the Democratic Republican Party, the party of Thomas Jefferson. Their ideals of limited government and broader participation in democracy appealed to me. In contrast, the Federalists seemed to me to represent entrenched privilege and the rule of the wealthy few. I threw myself into party work with energy, helping to organize meetings, build alliances, and rally voters. That I discovered quickly that politics was as much about relationships as it was about principles. I was not the tallest or most imposing man, but I had a gift for listening, for making others feel heard, and for finding common ground. These skills would serve me well throughout my career. I earned a reputation as a skilled negotiator, someone who could smooth over conflicts and bring people together. By 1808, I was elected to the New York State Senate. I was only in my mid-20s, but I had already begun to carve a place for myself in public life. The state Senate introduced me to the art of legislation, drafting laws, debating policy, and building coalitions. It was there that I began to develop the strategies that would later make me a key architect of the Democratic Party. In those early years, I learned another valuable lesson: that politics is not a solitary pursuit. It is built on networks, alliances, and shared interests. I saw that success did not come from standing alone, but from building a strong organization that could endure beyond any single individual. This insight would guide me as I rose further in politics, eventually earning me the nickname, the Little Magician, a reference to my skill in managing political machinery with precision and subtlety. Looking back, those first steps into law and politics were filled with energy and hope. I was young, ambitious, and eager to prove myself. The path ahead would not always be easy. I would face setbacks and challenges that tested my resolve. But in those years, I laid the foundation for everything that followed. My career in New York politics, my rise to the national stage, and ultimately, my journey to the presidency. I began as a boy in Kinderhook, listening quietly in the corner of my father's tavern. By my mid-20s, I had become a lawyer, a legislator, and a rising figure in New York politics. The world was opening before me, and I was determined to seize it. When I returned to Kinderhook as a young lawyer and legislator, I was filled with ambition. My election to the New York State Senate in 1808 was a turning point. At just 25 years old, I had moved from the quiet world of my village into the heart of state politics. The chamber of the Senate in Albany seemed grand to me then, a place where decisions were made that could shape the lives of thousands. I was keenly aware that I was still young and relatively unknown, but I also understood that youth could be an advantage. I could listen, observe, and learn. And I did. I studied the ways of older senators, their manners of persuasion, their alliances, and their rivalries. I quickly realized that politics was not simply about speeches or votes. It was about building coalitions, about uniting people with different interests around common goals. In those years, New York politics was turbulent. The Democratic-Republican Party, which I supported, was not a monolith, but rather a collection of competing factions. Some were loyal to DeWitt Clinton, the ambitious nephew of Governor George Clinton. Others aligned themselves with different leaders. Factional struggles could be as fierce as battles between parties, and I saw early on that my skill would lie in navigating these divisions. I worked tirelessly to strengthen the Republican cause. I supported Jefferson's vision of a more democratic nation, and later, James Madison's leadership during the War of 1812. Yet I also sought to ensure that New York's interests were not neglected. The state was growing rapidly, and its role in national politics was becoming increasingly important. It was during my service in the state senate that I first became known as a master of organization. I believed firmly that a successful political movement could not rely solely on charismatic leaders or passing enthusiasm. It needed structure, discipline, and loyalty. I devoted myself to building networks of supporters throughout the state: lawyers, farmers, merchants, and local leaders who could be counted on to advance our cause. This focus on organization would later earn me the title of the Little Magician. I was not a man of towering stature, nor did I possess the fiery rhetoric of some of my contemporaries. But I had patience, subtlety, and the ability to bring people together behind the scenes. I understood that power often came not from dramatic gestures, but from careful preparation and quiet influence. One of the great political contests of my time in the state senate was the rivalry between the Clintonians, followers of DeWitt Clinton, and the Bucktails, a faction within the Democratic-Republican Party with whom I became closely associated. The Bucktails, so called because they wore deer tails in their hats as a symbol of democratic simplicity, were committed to resisting Clinton's dominance. I threw in my lot with them, not because I opposed Clinton's every idea, but because I believed that no single man should dominate the politics of so great a state as New York. The struggle was intense. Clinton was powerful, popular, and ambitious. He championed projects like the Erie Canal, which promised to transform New York's economy and connect the Great Lakes to the Atlantic Ocean. I respected his vision, and indeed, the canal would later prove to be a triumph. But I also believed that Clinton's grip on power was unhealthy, and that true democracy required broader participation and stronger party organization. Through years of patient effort, I helped the Bucktails grow in influence. We built a disciplined political machine that could mobilize voters, secure offices, and check the power of entrenched elites. Some critics accused me of being too focused on party machinery, of caring more for organization than for lofty principles. But I believed that without structure, even the noblest ideals would collapse in the face of disunity and factionalism. My reputation as a skilled organizer spread beyond Albany. Leaders in Washington began to take notice of the young senator from Kinderhook. When the War of 1812 broke out, I supported the Madison administration and worked to ensure New York played its part. The war was controversial, especially in New England, where opposition ran high. But I believed it was necessary to defend our honor against British aggression and to secure our nation's independence once and for all. The war years were difficult for New York. Our state bore the brunt of British attacks along the northern frontier. Communities suffered, trade was disrupted, and morale was tested. Yet these hardships also forged a sense of unity and resilience. I learned much about leadership during that time, about the need to inspire confidence even in the darkest hours, and about the importance of balancing national loyalty with state interests. By the end of my service in the state senate, I had established myself as one of the leading figures in New York politics. I was not the most visible, nor the loudest, but my influence was real. I had helped build a faction that could challenge the might of Clinton. I had strengthened the Democratic-Republican cause in New York, and I had begun to shape the political organization that would later evolve into the Democratic Party. Looking back, I see those years as the true beginning of my rise. I had moved from the quiet corners of my father's tavern to the bustling courts of New York City, and then to the Senate chamber in Albany. Each step had taught me something new about the law, about politics, and about people. I knew even then that greater challenges lay ahead. The politics of New York were but a stepping stone. My ambitions reached beyond the Hudson River, beyond Albany, to the national stage. And in time, my efforts in New York would propel me into the highest councils of the nation, and eventually, into the presidency itself. But before that day came, I had much work still to do. The battles of New York politics were far from over, and I was determined to play my part in shaping the destiny of both my state and my country. When I first entered the United States Senate in 1821, I felt a sense of awe. The chamber in Washington was unlike anything I had known in Albany. Here gathered the leaders of every state, men of immense talent, ambition, and conviction. To be counted among them was both an honor and a challenge. I was still a relatively young man, but I carried with me years of experience from New York politics, and I was determined to make my voice heard. The early 1820s were often described as the era of good feelings. The Federalist Party had all but collapsed, and the Democratic Republicans held dominance across the nation. On the surface, it seemed a time of unity and peace. Yet beneath that surface, I saw divisions beginning to form. Divisions that would later split the party and reshape American politics. That my time in the Senate was a season of learning and maneuvering. I served alongside figures who would become my rivals, allies, and even adversaries in the years to come. Men such as John C. Calhoun of South Carolina, Daniel Webster of Massachusetts, and Henry Clay of Kentucky. Each of them was brilliant in his own way. Calhoun was fiery, Webster was eloquent, and Clay was charismatic. I, by contrast, was quieter, more deliberate. I did not seek to outshine them with soaring oratory, but I worked patiently to build influence through alliances and careful strategy. One of my greatest lessons during this period was the fragility of national unity. The War of 1812 had ended only a few years before, and though it secured our independence, it left unresolved questions about the balance between the states and the federal government. Tariffs, internal improvements, and slavery. These were the issues that began to stir heated debates in the Senate chamber. That I positioned myself as a moderate, a man who sought compromise and practical solutions. I believed deeply that the survival of our republic depended on maintaining harmony among its diverse regions. The North, the South, and the West all had competing interests, and if any one section dominated, the Union itself could be endangered. During my Senate years, I became increasingly convinced that strong, disciplined political organization was essential at the national level, just as it had been in New York. Without parties to structure debate and channel competition, politics would descend into chaos. I did not see parties as evils to be avoided, but as instruments of democracy, tools that could give voice to the people, provide accountability, and prevent the rise of unchecked power. This conviction guided me as I navigated the politics of the era of good feelings. Many hoped that partisanship had ended, but I knew better. Factions still existed. They were simply waiting for form and leadership. I dedicated myself to helping give the Democratic-Republican Party that form, to shaping it into a more coherent and enduring force. One of the defining issues of my Senate career was the question of slavery in the territories, brought to the forefront by the Missouri Compromise of 1820. Though the compromise was settled just before my arrival, its effects still rippled through the chamber. I recognized the deep passions it stirred. The South defended slavery as essential to its way of life, while many in the North viewed it with increasing unease. I understood that this conflict could one day tear the Union apart, and I sought to tread carefully, preserving balance while upholding the Constitution. Another critical debate centered on internal improvements, whether the federal government should fund roads, canals, and infrastructure projects. My own state of New York had already embarked on the Erie Canal, a project of immense significance. It convinced me that such improvements were vital for economic growth. Yet I also believed that the federal government must act within constitutional limits. I often argued for restraint, preferring state-led initiatives to unchecked national spending. In those years, I also came to admire Andrew Jackson. He was a man of the people, a hero of the Battle of New Orleans, and a symbol of democracy's rising tide. Though we did not yet stand side by side in politics, I saw in him the qualities that could inspire ordinary Americans: courage, simplicity, and a distrust of entrenched elites. Quietly, I began to imagine a future in which men like Jackson might lead the nation, and I knew that if such a day came, I would play a role in helping to organize that movement. The so-called era of good feelings was not, in truth, an era free of conflict. It was a transitional time, a pause between storms. I saw clearly that the Democratic-Republican Party could not remain united forever. Ambitions were rising, factions forming, and questions pressing for resolution. Would we become a nation of states loosely bound, or a stronger union under federal authority? Would slavery expand westward, or be contained? Would wealth and privilege dominate, or would democracy truly broaden its reach? These were the struggles that loomed ahead by the time I left the Senate in 1828 to assume greater responsibilities. I had built a reputation as a shrewd and capable leader. I was not the loudest voice in debate, but I was often the most effective in shaping outcomes behind the scenes. My colleagues learned to respect my judgment, and I learned how to navigate the dangerous waters of national politics without being consumed by them. The Senate years prepared me for the battles to come. They showed me the stakes of national leadership, the fragility of our union, and the importance of party discipline. They also strengthened my belief that a leader's duty was not to inflame passions for personal gain, but to steady the course of the republic through careful, principled action. As the 1820s drew to a close, the illusion of harmony faded. The presidential election of 1824 revealed the fractures within our politics. For candidates, all nominally Democratic Republicans, contested the presidency: Andrew Jackson, John Quincy Adams, William Crawford, and Henry Clay. The outcome was bitter, with Jackson winning the popular vote, but Adams claiming the presidency through a vote in the House of Representatives. To many Americans, this felt like a betrayal, a corrupt bargain. For me, that election was a signal. The old order had ended. A new era of political struggle was beginning, and I knew where I belonged. My years in New York had taught me the value of organization, and my years in the Senate had shown me the fragility of national unity. Now, I would bring those lessons together to help forge a new political movement, one that would rally behind Andrew Jackson, give voice to the people, and reshape American democracy. Thus, as the era of good feelings faded into history, my true national career began. The path ahead would be stormy, but I was prepared. I had learned from Kinderhook to Albany, from Albany to Washington, that ambition must be tempered with patience, and that the destiny of a republic lies not in fleeting passions, but in enduring principles. With that conviction, I stepped forward into the next stage of my journey. When the presidential election of 1824 ended in what many Americans called a corrupt bargain, I knew that the time had come for a new political movement. Andrew Jackson had won more popular votes and more electoral votes than any other candidate. Yet the House of Representatives awarded the presidency to John Quincy Adams. To the people, this was not simply a disappointment, it was an outrage. They believed their will had been betrayed, their voices silenced by political elites. That I saw in that moment both a crisis and an opportunity. Jackson embodied the spirit of the common man. He was a hero of the Battle of New Orleans, a soldier who had risen from humble beginnings to command the respect of a nation. His life story resonated with farmers, mechanics, and laborers far more than the polished pedigree of John Quincy Adams. But Jackson's cause needed more than popularity. It needed organization, strategy, and discipline. That was where I would play my part. In the years following 1824, I worked tirelessly to build what would become the Democratic Party. Drawing upon my experience in New York, I helped construct a national coalition that stretched from the north to the south, from the frontier to the coastal cities. We established local committees, coordinated newspapers, and mobilized voters like never before. Politics was no longer to be the domain of elites alone. It was to be a movement of the people. By 1828, our efforts bore fruit. The campaign for Jackson was one of the most energetic and passionate in American history. I traveled widely, forging alliances, speaking with community leaders, and ensuring that every corner of the nation felt connected to our cause. We emphasized themes of democracy, equality, and opposition to corruption. We painted Jackson as the defender of the people and Adams as the candidate of privilege. The election of 1828 was decisive. Jackson triumphed, winning the presidency by a landslide. For me, it was vindication, not only of Jackson, but of the principles I had long believed in, that disciplined organization, combined with the will of the people, could transform politics. I was honored to serve as his Secretary of State, a role that gave me the opportunity to shape foreign policy and strengthen our administration. As Secretary of State, I sought to maintain a steady hand in international affairs. The world was still unsettled after the Napoleonic Wars, and Latin America was in the midst of revolutions for independence. I believe the United States must support the cause of liberty abroad while protecting its own interests. We strengthened ties with Britain, managed disputes with France and Spain, and sought to expand American influence peacefully. Yet my true role in the Jackson administration was not limited to diplomacy. I became one of the president's closest advisors, a confidant who understood his instincts and helped translate them into policy. Jackson was a man of action, bold and decisive. I was more cautious, preferring patience and negotiation. Together, we balanced each other, his forcible complemented by my careful strategy, but not all was harmony in those years. Jackson's presidency was marked by fierce controversies, none greater than what became known as the Petticoat Affair. It began with the social ostracism of Peggy Eaton, the wife of Secretary of War John Eaton. Washington society shunned her, spreading gossip and undermining her standing. Jackson, fiercely protective of her, saw the scandal as an attack not just on the Eatons, but on his own honor. The affair divided the cabinet and created deep rifts within the administration. Vice President John C. Calhoun, whose wife was among Peggy Eaton's harshest critics, stood opposed to Jackson. I, on the other hand, supported the president unreservedly. My loyalty during that crisis strengthened our bond, and when I later resigned as Secretary of State to help resolve the turmoil, Jackson repaid my sacrifice with his full trust. That trust carried me to the vice presidency. In the election of 1832, Jackson sought a second term, and I was chosen as his running mate. Together, we faced fierce opposition from the National Republicans and their leader, Henry Clay. But once again, the people rallied to Jackson's cause. We won handily, and I assumed the office of Vice President of the United States, as Vice President. I presided over the Senate, witnessing firsthand the bitter debates that defined Jackson's second term. The nullification crisis tested the Union as South Carolina, under Calhoun's leadership, threatened to defy federal tariffs and even secede. Jackson stood firm, declaring that disunion by armed force was treason. I supported him fully, believing that the preservation of the Union was paramount. At the same time, I recognized the need for compromise, and I quietly encouraged measures that would ease tensions without surrendering principle. During those years, I also observed the great struggle over the Bank of the United States. Jackson detested the bank, seeing it as a tool of the wealthy that threatened the liberties of ordinary citizens. I shared his distrust. To us, the bank represented privilege and monopoly, standing in stark contrast to the democratic spirit we championed. Jackson's veto of the bank's rec charter was a bold stroke, and though it earned him fierce enemies, it endeared him all the more to the people. My years as Secretary of State and Vice President were years of trial and triumph. I learned much from Jackson. His courage, his decisiveness, his refusal to bend before entrenched interests. Yet I also knew that his style of leadership was not mine. I was less inclined to confrontation, more inclined to negotiation. If I were to succeed him, I would need to adapt his democratic vision to my own temperament and philosophy. By the end of Jackson's presidency, I was his chosen successor. He believed I would carry forward the cause of the people, defend the Union, and preserve the Democratic Party we had built together. For me, it was the greatest honor of my career to be entrusted by so great a man with the future of the Republic, but I also knew the weight of that trust. The challenges awaiting me were immense. The economy was unstable, sectional tensions persisted, and political opponents were gathering their strength. I could not foresee all that lay ahead, but I was resolved to meet it with the same determination that had carried me from Kinderhook to Albany, from Albany to Washington, and now to the doorstep of the presidency itself. Thus, with Jackson's blessing and the confidence of the Democratic Party, I prepared to take the final step in my long journey, to stand before the people of the United States as their candidate for president. What began in a small Dutch village on the banks of the Hudson River was now leading me to the highest office in the land. After leaving the presidency in 1841, I returned to New York with a mixture of relief and reflection. Relief, because the burdens of leadership had been immense, and reflection, because I had spent my life in public service and now had the chance to consider its meaning and consequences. Though I was no longer in office, I remained deeply committed to the ideals I had long championed: democracy, the rule of law, and the preservation of the Union. That I continued to engage in politics, though in a less prominent role. In 1848, I made the unusual decision to run for president once more, this time as the candidate of the Free Soil Party, a new political movement opposed to the expansion of slavery into the Western territories. Though I did not win, this campaign reflected my enduring commitment to principle over popularity. I believe passionately that the nation must confront the moral and political challenges of slavery, and that leadership requires courage even when the path is uncertain. In the years following that campaign, I returned to Kinderhook, the village that had shaped my youth. Life there was quieter, filled with family, friends, and the routines of daily life. I enjoyed the simple pleasures of home, walking the fields, attending local events, and engaging with neighbors. Yet I also remained a keen observer of national affairs, offering counsel when sought and writing letters that reflected my thoughts on governance, finance, and democracy. That I often reflected on my early years and the lessons they had imparted. Kinderhook had taught me the value of community, integrity, and hard work. My experiences in New York politics had shown me the power of organization and coalition building. My time in Washington had revealed the weight of responsibility and the fragility of public confidence. Each stage of my life had contributed to the man I had become, a man committed to service, principle, and the belief that democracy, though imperfect, was worth preserving. One of my enduring concerns in these later years was the preservation of the Union. The debates over states' rights, slavery, and sectional interests were growing ever more intense. I observed with worry the increasing polarization between North and South, aware that the decisions made by my generation could shape the fate of the nation for decades to come. I sought to counsel moderation, compromise, and adherence to constitutional principles, believing that only through careful statesmanship could the Union endure. As I aged, I also considered my place in history. I knew that my presidency had faced unique challenges and that my policies, though sometimes criticized, had been guided by conviction. I had encountered opposition, economic turmoil, and political rivalry, yet I had remained steadfast. I hoped that historians and citizens alike would recognize the value of steady leadership, integrity, and dedication to principle over fleeting popularity. Family and personal life became increasingly important in these years. I cherished time with my children, sharing stories of my youth, my career, and the lessons I had learned along the way. I sought to instill in them the values that had guided me: honesty, diligence, and commitment to public service. I also spent time reading, reflecting, and writing, finding satisfaction in intellectual pursuits and quiet contemplation. In the final decades of my life, I witnessed the growth and transformation of the United States. New states were admitted to the Union, railroads expanded across the continent, and debates over slavery intensified. I observed these changes with a mixture of pride and concern. Pride in the resilience and progress of the nation I had served, concern for the challenges that lay ahead. I knew that history would judge leaders not only by their victories, but by their adherence to principle and their efforts to navigate the nation through turbulent times. That I passed away on July 24, 1862, in Kinderhook, leaving behind a legacy intertwined with the growth of the Democratic Party, the Jacksonian era, and the evolution of American democracy. I was a man who began life in a small Dutch village, rose to the highest office in the land, and sought throughout to serve the people with honesty, foresight, and principle. Looking back on my life, I am reminded that leadership is never easy. It demands resilience, patience, and the courage to act according to one's convictions, even when unpopular. It requires understanding the hopes and fears of the people, balancing competing interests, and striving always to uphold the Constitution and the principles upon which this nation was founded. My hope is that future generations will see in my life an example of dedication, thoughtful leadership, and unwavering commitment to the ideals of democracy. Though I faced trials, setbacks, and criticism, I remained true to the values that guided me from Kinderhook to the White House. And perhaps, in that journey, there is a lesson for all who seek to serve their country, that steadfastness, principle, and integrity endure far beyond the fleeting triumphs and defeats of any single election. Thus ends my story, not as a tale of unbroken triumph, but as a testament to perseverance, service, and the enduring work of shaping a nation dedicated to the people, by the people, and for the people.